Hi guys! Welcome back to another video. I am coming at you, well, not live, I'm coming at you from my childhood bed. I just got back to Vermont last night. There is currently 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. It is completely dark outside and we're just going for it. So that is why, you know, the shadows are abundant, but I'm gonna try to make it work anyway. But yeah, I left yesterday, but I still have a little bit of content for you guys. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite parts of our trip, which was working with an organization called DrawBridge, which is an arts nonprofit that seeks to bring free art programs to kids who are living in transitional housing, homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters, and affordable housing in San Francisco and then in the surrounding area as well. And yeah, it's been amazing volunteering with them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how they got started, what their approach is, and then what my experience has been working with them. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so DrawBridge was founded in 1989 by Gloria Simoneau, who is an art therapist, and she started off by doing work with children in hospitals, but then she transitioned to focusing on helping kids work through the experience of being homeless and in transitional housing, and that's kind of how DrawBridge got started. And since then, the organization, their outreach has grown to 7 counties in the San Francisco area, and they have about 1,000 groups that meet a year, which is pretty impressive outreach. So what is their approach? I want to clarify that the programs are not art therapy sessions, even though the founder was an art therapist, and the idea of using art, you know, for self-soothing is definitely like a component of the work. The groups are designed to put the creativity and the needs of the children at the center of the activity. They're not art classes, like they're not there to teach a specific skill or to create a specific product. So each session is run by a facilitator and then a couple volunteers who help out, and that's what I was doing. And so each week the facilitator thinks of an art activity to do, they explain it to the kids, and they bring a bunch of art supplies that the kids can play around with. For example, one week we made these paper flowers for Day of the Dead. Another week we decorated like paper leaves. So yeah, it can be a bunch of different things. The kids don't have to make their art look a certain way. They don't even need to do the activity if they don't want to. So a couple weeks ago, this one girl spent the entire session just drawing a picture of the ocean. And that was totally cool and awesome. The emphasis is very much on creating a space where kids can just do whatever they want. They can play, they can have fun. And everything they do is valid. Another aspect of that approach that I think is important to highlight is the kind of praise that the facilitator and volunteers are giving to the kids. One thing that was really important in the volunteer training was talking about descriptive praise. An example of what descriptive praise is, let's say that a child shows you a picture they've done, and instead of going like, oh wow, that's so beautiful, you could say something like, wow, I love how you made the ladybugs red and purple. What made you want to do that? This kind of praise is much more specific, and it shows that you've really taken the time to like look at their artwork and pick out something specific about their creative process instead of just saying this like blanket statement. And also, by leaving out phrases like, that's so beautiful, or like, that's so pretty, you're not placing a value judgment on the art. Rather, you're focusing on like the child's process, you know, and not the kind of aesthetic value. And then lastly, when asking like what made you want to do that, like why did you choose that color, why did you choose that design, like who's that character, you're inviting the child to talk about their piece, and you're showing that like you're interested in what they're making, you want to hear about it, you know, and you're affirming them in that way. So it was really interesting to learn about descriptive praise, and it made me kind of think about like the praise I give in my own personal life and how I can make it more specific, how I can make it more thoughtful. And then the other piece of praise is, of course, how the kids speak to each other. And, you know, what do you do when one kid tells another that their art is bad? And a couple of weeks ago, this happened. And after I asked the facilitator, like, what do I do when someone says that? And she said, you know, we don't use those kinds of words here. And I thought that was very interesting and very powerful, just because, you know, by saying that, you're not trying to make a hard and fast rule for like the entire world or for every scenario, but rather just saying, you know, in this space, this is supposed to be a safe space to create whatever you want, and these are not the kind of words we use. Then I interviewed the project manager for DrawBridge to kind of help gather some thoughts and information for this video, and she was saying how it's also helpful to remind the kids that like they are part of creating this safe space and their words have an impact. Another thing I want to highlight about DrawBridge is that kids are allowed to show up in like whatever kind of mood they've had, whatever kind of day they've had. That's totally fine, and there isn't an expectation, just kind of adjust. Like for example, I was subbing for this group in San Rafael, and this one kid came in, he was probably 7 or 8 years old, and he glued 2 pieces of paper onto this notebook that we were decorating, and that is all he wanted to do, and he sat in silence, did not do anything else for the rest of the session, and like that was totally chill, you know, and he just did that, and then he went to soccer practice, and like everything was great. But I think it's really important to create a space where kids like don't have to compartmentalize their emotions for other people's comfort. You know, obviously if they're hassling other kids, like that's a problem, but other than that, I think that's really special. And I think it's also important to recognize that if you're living in an unstable living situation, that is going to add a lot of stress, and that's going to come out in kids' behavior, and it's just important to have empathy for that and not ask kids to shut their feelings down, you know, just for the sake of the group. And then the last thing I want to highlight is the fact that DrawBridge brings the art to the kids and to their communities, rather than having a central location where kids have to commute to. And I think this might be one of the most important parts about the organization, because it's honoring the fact that families who are living in shelters, in transitional housing, often do not have the time or the resources to take their kids to an art class, you know, downtown or something, or wherever it is. But that doesn't mean that their kids shouldn't have the opportunity to make art and hang out with their friends. And then I think it's also by having the art classes in the space, in the living space, you are injecting art into that community, into that space, rather than having it be the separate things that kids have to travel to get to. And for example, where I was volunteering in Daly City, the kind of like common area where we made the art, the kids could hang up their pieces on the wall at the end of the day, and then, you know, they can come and get their parents and like show them what they've done, and they get to make that space their own, you know, and have their artwork up to look at whenever they want. And I think that's really special. And when I interviewed the project manager, she was saying that that's something that DrawBridge wants to do more of, like, how can we use our resources to bring art not just to the kids, but to the community at large. That's something they're working towards in the future. So lastly, Marion, what has it been like volunteering at DrawBridge? I was volunteering at an affordable housing complex in Daly City, which is just south of San Francisco. And I was working with about 10 kids who were ages 4 to about 10 years old. And a lot of them were like siblings, cousins, or they just like they go to school with each other, so they all like know each other pretty well. So we would meet for 1 hour about every week, and it was a facilitator, and then the social worker of the building would also like come and hang out and make art with us as well, which was really cool. This was like the highlight of my week every week. It actually, like, working with those kids, I don't know, just really like life-changing. I just find it so delightful, and it gives me so much joy and so much hope to see these kids just like get completely immersed in the world that they're creating with their art, and just to see them making things making these imaginary worlds that like I cannot see, but that they're clearly so invested in, it's so cute, and it's so inspiring and just wonderful. And yeah, I'm always in such a good mood after the sessions. It's just delightful. And I think the other huge highlight has been working with the facilitator of the group, just because she's been working at DrawBridge for over 20 years, and she just has so much knowledge about how to work with kids and like how San Francisco has changed over time and kind of the art/activism scene in the city. And she was really generous with her time. Like, she got coffee with me and Tara to just talk about like her experience, talk to us about our project, and that was just so generous. And yeah, she's just a really inspiring person. So getting to talk to her was really cool. And likewise, the social worker of the building had been there for 4 years, and he just had so much information about like the obstacles families face trying to find affordable housing in the city. And that was just really special. I'm gonna miss them both. And we also just had a lot of fun like hanging out with the kids. And then I also want to say that like working with these kids and seeing how much fun they have together, just like playing and making art, really motivates me to do this kind of work. And I don't know, when I see them, I'm just like, I want to make a better world for you. Like, I do not want you to face any obstacles to having a happy life. I don't want you to experience any violence, like any housing insecurity. I just want you to have everything you need. I find it really emotional knowing that I got to step into their lives for a very brief moment. And I'm not gonna know how the rest of their lives go. But I also just feel really happy that I got to be part of making a space where they can do whatever they want, they can make whatever they want, and that work is validated and affirmed. So I want to end the vid with just a couple of my favorite moments from working with the kids. The first one would have to be at my last session. The social worker wasn't there to like remind the kids to come to art, so only one little boy showed up, but we were making these animal heads, animal faces on old DVDs and CDs, and we asked like, okay, what's your favorite animal? Like, what animal do you want to make? And he goes, a baby piggy. And he made this orange pig covered in little pom-poms with a unicorn horn in the middle. And then we asked him what he wanted to name the pig, and he said, Chubby Piggy, obviously. Also, he had some marker on his hand, and I was like, oh, how did you get that? And he said, oh, I got it at school when I was making my beautiful work. And just to see that like he sees his work as beautiful and like he is confident about his art was just so touching and really, really cute. And then I have to say, like, anytime I'm doing something and I feel a tiny little hand like pat my arm and a little voice go, can you help me? I'm like, yes, I will do anything for you. Like, I got you. And then the last thing would have to be, I love when the kids have drawn like a little creature or an animal or a really cool design, and to ask them like, oh, how did you make that? Like, can you show me how to make that? And they're just so patient going through each little step, and I've learned how to draw so many animals from them. And then I love it when another kid will come over and go like, oh, like, what are you guys making? And then I'll say, oh, well, can you help me make my drawing? And then we're all collaborating on our little drawings together, and it's just so sweet. Yeah, I love them. That concludes the video. I hope that this was at least somewhat helpful overview of what DrawBridge does, what it has meant to me to volunteer with them. I'm gonna put a link in the description to the organization's website if you want to go like check them out. If you're in San Francisco, definitely consider volunteering. But yeah, so that's that. The other thing is definitely Tara just made a zine about like our time in San Francisco and some of the art places we've been working at, all our thoughts, and so definitely check that out as well. I gotta plug my girl and her work, but that link will be in our Instagram, so if you feel like it, I would highly recommend. She's a very talented artiste, But yeah, I have one more video coming out that's going to be just kind of reflecting on our time in San Francisco and how the work we've done there, our experiences have answered our big question, how can art be a tool for social change? So stay tuned for that. That should be out on Friday. And then other than that, we're going to be going dark and like taking a couple weeks off for the holidays. But thank you so much for watching this. I hope you're having a great week. Happy holidays. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Bye, bye, bye.